All right, players, I'm going to try to do a series this off season, kind of diving into the golf swing. This is going to be a series about how I swing the golf club. It's going to be, kind of breaking it down into different components from the ground up, starting with the feet and legs, hips and trunk, arms and shoulders, wrists and club. So I'm going to break it up into a few different parts. We're going to kind of take a deep dive into it, and my hope is that we might find some things that you're not doing, or maybe some talking points. If there's something you're feeling or doing that's different than me, keep in mind this is the way I do it. It's not the only way to do it. There's a lot of different swings that work, and it's what I sense. So a good way to think about this is you might have two players that swing it almost the same, but they might describe what they're doing and what they're feeling very differently. So you got to take that into account. I'm just going to do my best to explain what I think I'm doing, what I'm trying to do, what I'm feeling as I'm doing it, and hopefully, like I said, we can use this content to maybe have some talking points in future lessons as we go forward. So I'm going to start it off today with footwork and foot action. Start from the ground up, and we'll go from there. All right, so what do I feel, or what things do I associate with footwork? So when I think of footwork in the swing, I'm thinking of things like pressure, forces, torques, weight distribution, and things like that. So a couple just things to think about when it comes to how your feet interact with the ground. If you're just standing here, let's say I weigh 180 pounds, and I'm just standing here still, I'm gonna have 90 pounds on each foot. That's basically the way it is. Now if I'm standing on some scales and I start doing this, bouncing up and down a little bit, I can put pressure down into the ground and then bounce back up off it. And if I do that, those scales the needles are gonna jump as I press down and then go back the other way and then wobble around a little bit as they come back to neutral. So just because, even though my weight doesn't really change, the scale might change because I'm putting more pressure into the ground at different times in the swing. When it comes to like weight shift and weight distribution, think about it like this. If you weight shift, you could easily stand here and move your weight over your right foot or your left foot. That would be one way to shift. Or just without moving too much, you could put more pressure into the right foot or more pressure into the left foot without a whole lot of side-to-side motion, which is kind of what happens in the golf swing. So at the start, as I'm getting ready to go, this is an 8-iron, I would say that I feel like, this may or may not be true, but I feel like my weight is pretty evenly distributed right to left. I don't feel like it's particularly one way or the other. With a driver, it's going to be a little bit more right side dominant. With a real short club, I might be a little more left side dominant, but my stock iron swing, it feels pretty 50-50. As far as where my pressure is, it's kind of on the frontish inside part of my shoe is kind of where I feel the most push into the mat, most squish. Now, as I'm going back, here's what I feel. In the backswing, I feel pressure building in my right foot. Now, there's still pressure in my left, but I feel pressure building in my right foot, and I also feel my right foot wanting to torque like this. If I was standing on a frozen lake, my right foot would be twisting this way. I can feel myself fighting that with my feet. So as I go back, I'm feeling some more intense pressure on the inner edge of my right foot because my foot wants to just do that, but I'm fighting it by kind of squeezing it into the ground is what it feels like, okay? In reality, my foot's not like crumbled up in my shoe, but I definitely feel like, my muscles are engaged in my feet trying to keep my foot in place when it wants to just kind of flop out like that, or whip around. So that's where I feel it mostly in the backswing. This foot, there's still pressure in the ground, it's just on the kind of inside edge. So I'm turning, that's what I'm feeling kind of in the backswing. I also feel like I'm getting heavier. I know that's not necessarily the truth, but I feel like I'm getting pressier into the ground as though I was getting ready to jump. So for example, going back to earlier, if I'm standing on a couple of scales, if I was getting ready to jump and I was doing this, that scale would jump heavy right before I lift it off. I feel a little bit of that sensation as I'm doing this. Now as I get to the top or start to arrive at the top, there's definitely a pressure shift for me into heavy into this foot. And this is where I really feel like it's pushing down. Like if that was a scale, let's say it started at 90 pounds, I feel like it probably reads 150 or 200 pounds, maybe even more than I weigh, because there's a lot of pressure right in here as though I'm going to explode off of that into the finish as I get this club up to speed. So pressure building right, my right foot's fighting this twist. As I get to the top, I start to feel a little bit of this motion, and my body, in reality, my body doesn't really slide too much one way or the other, but I can feel those forces moving around, or that pressure moving around, even though my body's pretty much staying still. So it's like right, 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 left, and then my feet are gonna start to elevate and launch up. And I kind of land on my front foot. Now I'm not actually leaving the ground, but I definitely feel like for a moment here, you'll see this on tour, you'll see players, sliding around airborne as they're launching up a little bit. If I was standing on ice, this foot tends to slip out backwards, but I'm not really pushing off, like a lot of people might feel like they're pushing off this way. I don't necessarily feel that. For me at least, it feels like it's more of a tip with my weight. I feel like I'm tipping my weight onto and into this foot as opposed to driving this foot, driving off of that foot. That's just what it feels like to me. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. It feels like I tip into this foot and then get up, landing on my front foot. If I was going to exaggerate it, it's going to look a little funky. If I was going to exaggerate it, it would be extra pressure, extra left, and extra up. That's what it would feel like. So if I was exaggerating my footwork, it would be, I would really probably turn, squat down here, and then lift off up. So that's kind of what I feel when I swing it. Obviously, it happens really fast. Sometimes it's hard to see those kinds of things. People look like they have quiet feet. And if you have good balance, your feet, when you look at like pressure traces of tour players, there's a lot going on, even if it looks pretty quiet. So I can hit it with really quiet looking feet with all those things still happening in a real short amount of time. So anyhow, to summarize, that's what I feel like happens with my footwork, and I hope you like this kind of video. If so, let me know, and I will do some more going from the ground up, maybe legs and hips next, trunk after that, arms, hands, and wrists following that. So thanks for watching.